You're listening to audio from the Decidedly podcast. For more information, find us on Instagram at Decidedly Podcast.
Oh, so Sanger, I brought you a gift for our recording.
Okay.
All right, for today. All right, let me get, because I went to the store on the way over here. You can either have peach oolong tea.
Okay.
Or Moroccan mint green tea.
Oh, Moroccan mint.
Damn it, that's the one I wanted. All right. All right, take the Moroccan mint green tea.
Hey.
This is honest tea.
Not a liar.
What?
Not a liar.
Oh, not
It's
a liar
honesty.
tea?
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you know why I brought this to you?
Do I know why you brought honest tea?
Because we're talking to Barry Nalebuff today, who is the founder of Honest Tea.
No, really?
Yeah. I kid you not.
No way.
Yeah. All right.
Oh, wow.
Isn't that cool?
I drink this all the time.
I know. So, all right. So I don't. So I'm gonna try it I haven't tried peach oolong tea.
Oh, that reminds me of Morocco.
I love, man, Morocco. Do you realize how much sugar they put in that tea in Morocco? Like, we were there and they would make it in that little pot and
nice and piping hot.
Piping hot, right? And they would put in a chunk of sugar in this little teapot.
Did they really?
Probably, the size of a baseball.
I didn't know.
Oh yeah, and just tons of the mint. It was just mint. They would boil the water, put the mint in, and then you remember how they would hold it up and like pour it from like 3 feet in the air.
I don't.
And aerate the tea, and then they had like so much sugar in there. That's why it was so good.
Yeah, everything that's good has sugar in it. This has 9 grams. So
is that a lot though? Is 9 grams?
No, like a Dr. Pepper's like 40.
Okay, so it's not bad.
Only 35 calories.
Yeah, 16 carbs.
I mean, they're also not.
Oh, mine has more sugars. Mine has 16 grams of sugars. Why is mine? I don't even get the benefit. Yours has got to be better.
It's just a tad sweet, Dad. That's what they say.
Okay, all right. So anyway, I am interested in talking to Barry, find out how he started that and sold it. He sold it to Coca-Cola.
Oh, really? Coca-Cola owns like all.
They own everything.
Beverages.
They own like water, like Dasani water.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure. And Minute Maid.
That's the end goal when you own a.
Well, no, I think if you own sodas, that you got to figure out how to diversify, because people are drinking less.
Yeah, they're getting the
sugary sodas.
Getting a little bit of heat.
Yeah.
Our guest today is the founder of Honest Tea. He's the Milton Steinbach Professor at Yale School of Management. For 30 years, he's taught negotiation, innovation, strategy, and game theory. He's the co-author of 6 books and an online course. In 1998, Barry Nalebuff and his former student Seth Goldman co-founded Honest Tea. It's a company that sells ready-to-drink iced tea that tastes like actual tea. And today I had one of many bottles throughout my life of Honest Tea. It's fantastic, delicious, and tastes wonderful. They were one of Inc. magazine's fastest growing companies. They've sold 2 billion bottles of tea, and in 2011 the company was purchased by Coca-Cola. He had a second venture in the beverage world called kombucha. It's a slightly alcoholic version of kombucha. That company was acquired in 2016 by AB InBev, and he's currently working with Quaker Oats to help create Maker Oats, an unusually thoughtful overnight oats product. And he announced on our podcast a new beverage company that he's working on with Seth Goldman called Just Iced Tea. He works with so many entrepreneurial firms, serves on the board of Q Drinks, Calikraft Beer, and AGP Glass. He has extensive experience consulting with over 50 multinational firms. He advised the NBA in their prior negotiations with National Basketball Players Association, served on the board at Nationwide Insurance, graduate of MIT, Rhodes Scholar, junior fellow at Harvard's Society of Fellows, and a doctorate from Oxford University.
Made us feel stupid.
Might be the longest bio I've ever read on this show. One of the smartest guys we've had on this show. One of the most insightful conversations that Sean and I have had on this show. I know you're going to learn a lot from our conversation with Barry. I'm Sanger Smith with my dad, Sean Smith, and this is Decidedly. Hey, Barry.
Greetings.
I got the mint tea, the Moroccan mint tea, and this reminded me of a trip that
The
Sean and I
peach one.
took, like, I don't know, like 15 years ago. This tastes exactly like the tea that I had in Morocco. So I know that I have you to thank for the company. I don't know how much credit you get for this individual flavor, though.
I get a lot of credit for that flavor. It was one of our original 5.
Oh,
When
really?
we were starting the company, we needed to come up with 5 flavors very quickly. And so essentially we stole flavors from around the world, which was how do people drink green tea in Morocco? Well, they add honey and mint. So, okay, we've got Moroccan green, Moroccan mint.
Yeah,
Also,
that-
I don't know if you know the update.
No.
No.
So Coca-Cola about 3 weeks ago decided to discontinue Honest Tea.
Really?
And they're keeping Honest Kids, but they are ending what has been now, I guess, a 24-year run. And that made Seth and I quite sad.
Yeah.
But we got the band back together, and we've started a new company, and we'll be on the shelves in October. And
What's the new company?
it's called Just Ice Tea, which can also
like
be read as
Justice.
Justice Tea.
Yeah. Okay. What inspired that is that, I mean, obviously you read it immediately. You're like, oh, Honest Tea, like clever name. Think about it for a little bit longer than just the pun.
Mhm.
Okay. They're communicating something to me here.
Yeah.
And now you're going from honest to justice. There's a broader theme.
Well, in this particular case, one of the things that happened is that we had really developed strong relationships with farmers, and we had encouraged farmers to move to organic tea and then to fair trade tea. And that was making a huge difference in the lives of these communities. And when Coca-Cola decided to stop Honest Tea, this was one of the largest purchasers of fair trade tea in the world. And so these farmers were going to be left high and dry. And we couldn't let that happen. And so we see this as justice for the farmers and for our customers, who we also didn't want to leave high and dry.
Oh, wow. Okay.
That's amazing.
That's cool.
Yeah. You've got to be pretty motivated by that story, because I imagine, having sold a product to Coca-Cola, you're not doing this to pay the bills.
There's truth to that. As I joke that after the sale of the company, I could do anything I wanted in my life, and I'm living in the same house, teaching the same, doing the same job, and married to the same woman. My view is that's actually what you want to do in life, is basically make sure that if you could do anything, you'd actually be doing what you're currently doing.
I just had that conversation with somebody yesterday. We were talking about wealth accumulation, and I said, if there's so many people out there, if they can just keep the same job, the same house, the same spouse, they do just fine. And it's the division of any of those that is this.
Once you start changing those up,
Oh, you change any of those, there's some friction in the growth curve there.
That's a great point.
So you actually wrote a book about that process, didn't you?
The book is called Mission in a Bottle. It was written with my former student, partner, and now teacher, Seth Goldman. And we did it in comic book form because we wanted to really make it accessible to the current generation. And also the story is one that really does come alive, I think, through images.
I was doing some digging before we were set to talk with you, and I was looking at all the different books you'd written, and holy cow, save some books for somebody else to write, wouldn't you? 7 books on different, not all in one topic even.
There's truth to that.
So tell me about the concept on the Split the Pie book that came out in March. I was intrigued by the name because I had read the book by Chris Voss, which is different from that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Never split the difference.
Sure.
And so I wanted to reconcile how your approach is different or contrasting between that.
Yeah, well, I think there's a lot of complementarity. Chris says early on that you should talk about giving the person a fair deal, check in that you're giving them a fair deal, that they're seeing it as fair. But one of the things he never does is define what fair means. And people tend to come up with a notion of fairness that is self-interested. So the question really is, what is the negotiation about? Because it's strange to say this, but most people are confused on what they're negotiating over. And if they actually understood the negotiation pie, the way in which people go about splitting it would be a whole lot easier, a lot less conflict. You don't have to be a jerk to succeed in negotiation if you really know what the negotiation is about.
So you probably went through some negotiations with Coca-Cola when they acquired Honest Tea. Did those negotiations inform the work that you did?
Yeah, it was actually the first time the theory of the pie was put into practice. I've been teaching it at Yale for many years, but when it came time to negotiate with Coke, it was like, okay, let's see if it works. And
how did that go?
I think both sides actually liked it. So here was the problem we had. At the time, Honest Tea sales were around 25 million, and that was too small to fit into Coca-Cola's world. So they said, look, we'd like to buy you, but can we buy you in 3 years when you're a little bit bigger? We said, okay, yeah, that works. And during those 3 years, we're going to help you with marketing, with production, with purchasing. Great. Yeah, I like that.
Okay.
It's one of the reasons why we want to do things with you.
Would those expenditures come off the sale price, I would guess, right?
Well, that was now this question, which is, it's like, okay, we're going to help you, but we don't want to pay more for the help that we're creating.
Right.
And
okay. We just want to make it a safer deal when we do it. Okay.
Yeah. And so my response is, well, actually, you should pay not full price more for the help that you're providing, but you should pay half price on the help you're providing, because it's true we need your help, but you need us to be the party that's helped.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll give you some more examples of that, which will help make it clear. But so what we said is, you should pay full price up to sales of X. And to the extent that we get sales above X, then you only have to pay half price on sales above that level.
Okay.
And X is what we think we could do without you. And above X, we can only do with your help.
Fair enough.
And we then spent a week arguing about what full price meant and what X was.
Right.
But in the first hour, we had an agreement on this framework, which was, let's create a big pie that is sales above X, and let's split it. And then the rest is sort of a data exercise. So I want to turn negotiation from a sort of who can make ultimatums, who can shout louder, and so on, into let's understand what we're negotiating over and agree to make a big pie and split it.
So break that down a little bit more, Barry. The concept is create a bigger pie, and everybody who's getting a piece of this pie is going to end up having more pie in their mouth, even if the pieces are smaller, but the pie is bigger. Is that what you're saying?
Well, it's that I'm agreeing up front on how we're going to negotiate. So let's agree that what we're going to do is split this pie. Mm-hmm. Now that we've gotten rid of the contentious part, let's work together to make the pie big.
Yeah, it's not my pie, it's not your pie, it's our pie. So if we can grow the pie, we're all happy.
Yeah. And people talk about zero-sum negotiations, but actually negotiations are never zero-sum, because if we don't reach a deal, we both get zero. And so actually that's the disastrous outcome.
Yeah.
And people, as you guys specialize in behavioral economics, well, you know, people will reject deals they see as unfair.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
You offer somebody an 80-20 ultimatum, they're in the 20 side, they just say, no, you both get zero. Yeah. So if you can convince somebody that this deal you're proposing is fair, then you're all set.
How challenging was it to convince Coca-Cola that the deal was fair?
Well, again, they agreed up front that this idea of splitting the gains above X was exactly the right strategy. So let me give you another example. I've got this friend who made a rookie mistake. He went to buy a trademark without hiring a lawyer.
Okay.
And what he forgot was that trademark filings are public. And then when he went to buy the domain name associated with the trademark, he discovered that this troll, who I'll call Edward Kahn, because that's his name, had bought had gone and bought the URL associated with the domain name.
was just trailing behind the
Well, some
trailing
people-
behind it, just buying the domains after people file.
That's a real snake strategy to make some money. Is you just
Oh
wait
my
for those
God.
trademarks to get filed, buy the name immediately, and go, all
Yeah.
right, this guy's going to come ask me for money one day.
Yeah. And so basically, my friend does the search, discovers Edward Kahn has it, writes to him, and Edward writes back saying, sorry, didn't realize it was related to your domain name. Yeah, right. Sorry.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And happy to sell it back to you for $2,500.
Okay.
Well, my friend is dumb, but he's not an idiot. And he does some search and he discovers this organization called ICANN. And ICANN does the handing out of domain names. And if there's a dispute, they have a dispute resolution process. And what Edward had done is called registration in bad faith. And it turns out Edward has a track record here. He's been taken to ICANN many times. He's always loses. Not only does he lose, he doesn't even bother protesting because he knows he's going to lose. So why bother spending the effort?
Oh, wow. Okay. So if somebody is sort of caught operating in bad faith, the ICANN, which is the regulatory agency, sort of covering those domain names, just comes in and goes, we see what you're trying to do here. Don't be a jerk. Okay.
You are a jerk, actually.
Yeah, you're a jerk.
I'm
we're not
taking this
let
away
you
from
continue to be a jerk. Okay.
I'm going to take this away from you.
Okay.
And the only problem is ICANN doesn't do this for free. It costs $1,300. So
okay.
So my
your
friend
friend's
writes
out
back
$1,300 at the minimum.
So my friend writes back to Edward and says, look, there's $2,500. That's not going to work. I'd rather go to ICANN and pay $1,300 and you get zero.
Right.
So I'll give you $500. And Edward writes back and says, $1,100. And seal the deal. Say yes now. Let's close this thing. I'm going away. It's my best offer. So Edward's starting off and he's trying to anchor with a really high number.
Yeah.
And then he's now trying to do time pressure.
Right.
So I guess my questions to you is, what is this negotiation pie and who has more power here? And let's say, for argument's sake, that my friend values this domain name at $20,000.
Right.
Okay.
That was a question.
Well, I would say that that's interesting. It seems like he should pay him $650 would be the top. Just split the pie, to steal a reference.
So let's start with the points. What is the negotiation pie? And it's exactly $1,300. The fact that my friend values this at $40,000 is irrelevant. $20,000 is irrelevant.
It doesn't matter what it's worth, because he doesn't need to pay any more than $1,300. So I mean, I don't know, anything less than $1,300
is a win for your friend.
Here's how I would think about it. You tell me if I'm wrong. I would look at it and go, is it worth $200? Edward offered me $1,100.
Yeah,
I could pay $1,300 to not
have
it done.
Yeah,
is it worth $200 to me to bone Edward?
Yes.
Yeah.
And the answer is yes.
Yes.
So I want you to take out that mean bone in your body, and
okay. Now I'm thinking emotionless about this. I don't hate Edward in this scenario.
Right.
Yeah.
How much is it worth to you to have Edward get zero?
Yeah.
Right.
No. It's just how much I'm trying to basically get the best deal I can. And who has more power in this negotiation? We've agreed, great, that this negotiation is over $1,300. That's the pie.
Yeah.
Is my friend more powerful, or is Edward more powerful here?
Your friend
is.
Your friend can control whether Edward gets zero.
Actually, Edward can control whether my friend gets zero.
I'm learning. I would fail out of Yale.
Every freaking question he asks, I get the wrong answer.
What's true about the deal? They have to shake hands, right? If either party says no, there's no deal.
Okay.
So my friend needs Edward, and Edward needs my friend. If my friend says no, Edward gets zero, but my friend pays $1,300.
Yes.
And so essentially, to save that $1,300, both sides have to agree on how it's split. So I think, as Sean says, $650 is the right answer.
Yeah. I did have the right answer.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm redeemed.
but
I'm redeemed. All right.
And Edward has proposed a split, which is $1,100 to him, $200 to my friend. Now you could flip that and say, look, Edward, I'll pay you $200. But that's actually called fighting fire with fire. And that's just going to piss Edward off. So
right. Then he's going to just say, screw you. Right.
Yeah. So rather than say that, say, look, for the same reason that you wouldn't accept $200, which is 1,100 gain for me and 200 for you, you shouldn't expect me to accept 1,100, 200 split the other way.
Mhm.
And that there's 1,300 to split. I'm willing to give you 650. I'll be up 650. And that's as far as I'm willing to go. So Edward comes back and says 900. And basically that's kind of halfway between 650 and 11.
He thought this was a normal negotiation.
Yeah.
Okay.
And my friend at that point doesn't write back, doesn't answer him. And a week later, Edward says, fine, 650. And they use escrow.com. And the thing is, Edward doesn't care about the pie. He doesn't care about fairness. He's a troll. He's a snake. So why did this work?
Right.
And the answer is that my friend cared about those things. And Edward understood that. And if Edward wanted to do a deal, then he had to do a fair deal.
So if you're splitting the pie, there's ultimately the laws of nature are going to result in this deal being a fair deal.
Yeah.
Unless you're dealing with a troll who can't figure that out.
No. Even if you're dealing with the worst person in the world,
yeah,
the worst, dumbest person in the world can figure that out.
You can explain it to them, and they don't have to care about fairness. But if they understand that you do and you've offered a fair deal, then what they're doing is throwing spaghetti up on the wall and seeing if anything sticks. They have no principles. And so,
so they could do anything. Yeah, you can get someone without principles to mold to your principles.
Well, to a principle, a real principle.
To any principle.
It's a real one. There is no other one. It's basically, and as you probably guessed, by the way, that idiot was me. That was, and the other lesson is buy the damn domain name before filing for the trademark. That's $12.50. Save you a lot of money. And note also, people say that you should anchor at a high number when you start a negotiation, but actually that hurt Edward, because then he has to move from 2,500 to 1,100 to 900. So it says to me, he's like Jello. Nothing he says, he has no backbone.
Yeah. Well, that always frustrates me in negotiations when people tell me, "Oh, this is my last and final offer. Can't do any better," and then you call their bluff, and then they do.
Yeah. So like everything they said is a lie.
Yeah, and it makes me just think, you know what? The reason that you're not getting that extra 300, Edward, is because you don't have any principles. It's because you're a liar. It's because it's because you told me you wouldn't take less than 900.
And then you did.
And that's why you deserve to pay it.
Well, I still offered him a fair deal, unlike you, who just want to bone him.
I would just screw him. Yeah, I would just say, get out of here.
You're just a spiteful person.
I'm just not
like
a
that.
nice person to people that try to mess with me.
There you go.
Yeah.
But
that is the difference, because you've got you can do a better job of removing your emotions from a decision like that. And I admittedly would have a lot of negative emotions.
Yeah. So a lot of people
how do you
talk about emotions in negotiations? And my view is there's not enough logic in negotiations. If we can just add some damn
what I was
logic,
gonna ask you.
we can bring down the temperature.
Yeah. So how do we figure out? Because that one's pretty simple. The pie is $1,300 in that example you were using.
Okay.
How do we figure out what the pie is normally? Because in your example with Coca-Cola, that's you're trying to define what the pie is. Everything above X. Where does it start? Where does it end?
It's a data exercise. In that case, it's okay. Market price for sales up to X. That's what were the deals with Sobe and Fuse and all the other companies that are out there. What should X be? It's how fast have we been growing? So let me give you another example. You can help my mom in this case. She ended up buying a house in Sarasota. She was living there as a renter. The person who was the landlord said, it's a hot market with work from home. I'm putting this house up on the market. And I'm planning, I think I can get $800,000 for it, but I'll sell it to you for $790. Okay. So now my quiz question again. What's the pie here?
$10,000.
No, that's what he's offered her, but that isn't.
Well, I guess if the 800,000 is a real number, the 790 and the split would be the 10,000. But I guess we don't know the 800,000 if that's a real number.
So let me go back and define the pie, because it's probably helpful. The pie is the value created by these two people doing a deal. It's what these people can create that other people can't. So with myself and Edward, we could save $1,300 by not going to ICANN. With Coca-Cola and Honest Tea, we could get sales above X that weren't possible if we didn't do this deal. So what is the value my mother can create by being the buyer of this house compared to other people being the buyer of this house?
Geez, I don't know. You stumped me. If he can get more,
well,
then...
let's say 800,000 for the moment is the market price, what he'll get by selling the house to anybody else.
Okay, then he'd get 94% of 800.
Yeah, so he'd get actually 760, 94%. Let's call it 95%, and 5% real estate commission.
Okay.
Yeah.
So basically, he'd lose $40,000 is going to go to a real estate agent.
Yeah. Okay. I see.
Okay.
All right.
What else? Well, my mom would have to pay costs to move to some other place. So physical costs, the movers, psychic costs.
Yeah.
He would have to spend some money fixing up the place, repainting, putting in new carpets and the like. He might also end up with the place being empty for a month or two while it's on the market.
Oh, okay. So I see how you're thinking about this now. So the pie then in that example is his real estate transaction cost, her moving costs, his possible vacancy costs.
Yeah.
And that's, so the value of doing a deal is all of that.
So 790 is not a fair deal for your mom.
Yeah. So what is the pie here? Well, let's call his fixing up costs and my mom's moving costs a wash. Let's call those equal. And there's the $40,000 real estate agent commission.
Okay. All right.
And so my mom writes back and says, look, I think we can save this $40,000 commission by doing transaction between the two of us. And these other factors kind of cancel out.
Right. Don't put it on the market. Just sell it to me. Right.
So I'm prepared to buy it from you at the market price minus $20,000. Basically split the commission.
All right.
He writes back and says, I don't think you get it. It's a hot market. And that's why I deserve more of the commission.
I don't think you get it, sir.
And the answer is you don't quite get it because the hot market means the market price is high.
Right.
But it doesn't mean that you have any more power over the 40,000. If you sell to anybody else at 800,000, you get 760.
Yeah.
If my mom buys the equivalent house for anybody else, she's going to have to pay 800. And so the only way to get that 760 to 800 gap is you're the seller and my mom is the buyer.
Right. That's the only pie there is.
The only way to get that 40,000.
Yeah, that's the only way to get that pie in that situation, because if she walks away, he's paying 40 at least.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so he gets it. He agrees. And then he really gets religion and says, you know what? Let's use the same lawyer for the closing. Why double legal costs? We can basically save money that way too.
Okay.
So yeah, it's not necessarily the natural way to think about negotiation.
No, it's not. Yeah.
But when you see it correctly, you appreciate that both parties have equal power.
Is there always a pie?
Well, no. Sometimes they shouldn't be. Sometimes there's no deal to be done.
Well, no. Okay. I mean, for example, let's say it's not. It's not a house. It's just I'm selling something that wouldn't have such a big transaction cost, real estate commission fee, something like that. I'm just selling a bicycle or something. Then doesn't it just become a negotiation on price alone? There's no split the pie. So my question is there always a split the pie?
Yeah, there is. I mean, look, if I value something above what you're willing to sell it for, the pie is that gap. So if you're willing to sell the bike at $30 and I'm willing to pay $50, then there's a $20 spread, and that's the pie. Now, we don't always know what the pie is. Sometimes it's hidden. People try and pretend things that are different. I've given you examples where the pie is known. In essence, we can calculate it.
Well, the example you just gave would be one, I guess, the 40,000.
So maybe in those scenarios where we have people, like I think all three of us have probably tried to make a deal with someone where we, at some point where we go, geez, why would this guy not take this? I'm giving them way more than a fair offer. I'm bending over backwards to make this deal.
This seems like a good deal. Yeah.
I feel like I've had deals where I go into them and I want to make a deal so bad that I ultimately, like, the pride in the game of making the deal becomes so I'm like chasing that so much that I've passed the point where I've split the pie evenly. I'm like, this isn't even a good deal for me anymore. I'm just like trying to see if I can get it done. You kind of get to that point after you realize, or like before you realize that you are there. But I've had those moments before. I'm like, God, I'm offering a really, really sweet deal here.
Yeah.
This person just won't take it. Not reasonable.
Well, or there are two things you didn't do, in my view. One is you didn't really explain to them why it was a great deal. But
Yeah.
more than that, you didn't start the negotiation with how it is you're going to negotiate. If you said, look, can we agree up front that what we're going to do is create a great deal for the two of us and split the gains, split the pie?
Yeah.
And basically, if they said the answer to that question is yes, now all you have to do is convince them this is what the pie is, and that's why we're splitting it evenly.
Yeah.
So
All right,
people
there's some
jump
deals I'm
way
gonna
too
go
quickly to
revisit.
talk about price. and that's terrible in my view. Better is to talk about interest, not positions, as in getting to yes. But even better still is to talk about what the process is
Yeah,
going to
that's
be.
true. Everyone kind of starts with price. All right, so this is what I think. Boom.
Well, I think it's worth X, right? You think it's worth Y, and then we get
and then now we're mad at each other.
we gotta reconcile that.
Yeah.
So it's also like, what else? I said, look, I know at some point we're going to talk about price. I got that. But is there anything else that's going to matter to you besides price? Move-in date, closing dates, furniture, cash bid, mortgage contingencies.
Well, we're kind of set up to fail then in the housing market where everything is listed by price and we filter by price.
Okay. But we can try and fix that, right? When you start your communications, see if you can do better.
I don't know.
There's a lot of that in home negotiations where you say,
Well,
I want you to leave this.
You're
fix
not
that.
even in the door without starting at price.
Yeah. It's a crazy market right now.
You're starting with price, though.
Well, again, people care about things like, is there a mortgage contingency? How long is it going to take to do the inspection? When do you want to move in quickly or slowly? Do you want an early close, a late close? Tell me, does anything else matter to you besides price? If in the end they say nothing besides price, okay, then I get it. But it's rare that that's true.
Yeah, that people will say that, but they don't really mean it. I'm going to shift gears. How did you end up consulting with the NBA?
I answered the phone. One day.
They called you up?
They called me up. David Stern called me up on the phone, invited me down to come talk to them. I'd written an op-ed talking about this idea of a virtual strike, where essentially the players keep on playing and the fans keep on watching, but essentially the players don't get paid and the owners don't get paid. So we don't screw the fans, but we have the same.
I love that one, actually.
Same economic hardship.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think 5 years earlier, he had read that, we had talked about it, and he decided it was just too wacky.
Okay.
But
or too logical.
Logical. And then 5 years later, it turned out that in the next CBA negotiation, collective bargaining negotiation, the players had a brilliant economist working for them. So the owners thought maybe they should have at least a good economist working for them. And that gave me an opportunity to really start applying some of these theories to the case of collective bargaining.
So you worked on behalf of the NBA and the ownership or the owners.
Correct.
To
I work with the billionaires versus the tall millionaires.
Yeah, the which, you know what, it's so funny. It's so funny how, like, I feel like the ultra wealthy are really like not a group that anyone ever defends, right, in any area except for sports owners, because the fans will look at the players and be like, those players, they're making so much money. We don't like those players. They're making way too much money. And then we take the defense of the owners who are making 10 times the money.
Well, again, by the way, if there is no deal, guess what happens?
Yeah,
there's no game. There's no season. Yeah. So it's true that the players say, "Oh, we're the game. Well, without us, there's no game." Well, as we discovered during a lockout, without the owners, there's no game either.
So well, I remember. I'm old enough to remember when the NFL did that, and then brought in the scrubs, they called them.
Yeah.
Just brought in other guys to just play.
That didn't work so well.
No, it didn't. Nobody's done it since.
Yeah. Oh, the ref strike in the NFL.
No, I'm talking about
no. I'm saying, remember the ref strike?
Yeah.
Everyone thought the refs, who cares about the refs? The refs are going on strike. Get them out of here.
Just get some other refs.
I could ref the game. And then they had the backup refs. Complaints about refs for the next season and a half were just non-existent. They're like, oh, you actually guys, it must be really hard.
Those guys were actually
those other guys were way worse than y'all.
And I don't think too many players are going to go off to Russia now if the whole season doesn't work here.
Oh well, all it took was one player going to Russia and having a terrible experience. Brittany Griner's still in prison.
Right.
So yeah, no one's going to Russia.
No.
But what? So the pie there is in that negotiation between the owners and the players is
the season, is all of the value that's created by fans watching it on TV, going in person, the marketing that goes associated with sneakers or other endorsement contracts.
Mm-hmm.
So how did that negotiation resolve itself? What did you guys have to decide on in that one that you were involved with?
What ended up happening was two sides were a little bit apart. They negotiated generally as a function of share of revenue. And at one point, the players were asking for 51% of revenue and the owners were offering 50. And let's be clear that 50% of revenue was still 100% of profits. So,
wow.
And
why would they even offer that?
Yeah, that didn't make any sense.
Well, because their old contract was 57% of revenue and they were losing a couple $100 million a year. So this was a step in the right direction.
These owners were losing money?
Yeah.
Why would they? But okay, so why would they take that deal? Why would they even offer that?
That's why they were prepared to do a lockout. They were tired of losing money.
They were tired of losing money.
Yeah, there's no point. That lockout can go forever in that case.
Well, you start damaging the brand. And so then it's not
what brand? It's a it loses money.
No, but if you then have a different contract, you can have a contract that makes money, but you don't want to lose the brand of you don't want to destroy the pie in the process of trying to split it up fairly.
Okay, well, I can understand now how you get to a lockout.
No, I totally get that. Yeah, I mean, if I'm at 57%, I'm losing money. I'm drowning in debt, so to speak. I'm losing money every year. But why would they start the negotiation? Why would they anchor to, you can have all my money rather than me losing money? You can just have all of it.
They started off at 37%.
Okay.
And over time, one thing led to another, and they finally got to a 50-51 divide. And in the end, the smart thing was decided was if revenues were above target, then the owners could be more generous, because when revenues are above target, there are more profits to be split.
Okay.
And if revenues were below target, then the owners could be less generous. And so instead of just having a fixed split, the split could adjust based on how revenues compared to target. So
you had a dynamic split.
Yeah. And that actually allowed the players to get 51%, what they were asking for when times were good, and gave the owners the 50% split when times weren't as good.
That's interesting.
I like that.
Yeah. So it was like a variable rate.
Variable split. Absolutely. Yeah. And like I said, you're giving people what it is. One of my theories of negotiations, you want to give the other side what it is they want. Not because you want to be generous or nice, but if they get what they want, then you can get what you want. And the players
got to be creative to get that.
Yeah, which is another reason.
Creative.
Most people are not creative.
Yeah. Well,
with negotiations.
So why? Because if I've been butting heads with you for the last hour, days, weeks, then I'm exasperated, I'm exhausted, I don't trust you. So actually, I think creativity should be a first resort, not a last resort. And if I can change the way we negotiate by starting off and talking about, can we agree to split the pie? Now let's focus on being creative and how it is we can make a big pie.
Yeah. I had a deal for a property that I was purchasing that I had offered a certain price and said, hey, I'm going to have to finance this for you, but I'm going to get you a check. But right now, I just don't quite it's not worth the risk to me to make this 20% to the bank. If I can finance the majority of it through the bank and then a small amount from you, I'll actually raise the purchase price.
Sure.
So you will get the exact same dollar amount check.
Yeah.
from me
Mhm.
on closing, and then
Yeah.
I will then owner finance to you the
Yeah.
spread between the original sale price and the new sale price.
Mhm.
And this person was like, it just made them uncomfortable. They didn't understand it.
Yeah.
And then a couple of years later, buy the same property for the exact same original price.
Mm-hmm.
I'm happy with that deal, but it's kind of a curious, like, okay, well, if we were willing to think creatively, we could have gotten here without all these problems, and it would have been better off for you.
Yeah. Well, I would say a lot of people, when they're selling deals, sell the deal based on what's good for them, not what's good for the other side. And so you really have to explain to the other side, look, I'm prepared to give you your asking price.
Plus
Now
extra.
But I'm going to give it to you in a different way.
Yeah.
And some of that's going to be essentially a note.
Yeah.
And the good news is that if your property is really worth what you say it's worth, then that note's fine. Now, if it turns out that you've oversold what this property is ultimately worth, then the note may not be as good, but in which case your property isn't worth what you say it's worth.
So how do you go in on a negotiation like that where you want to move from price over to a sort of pie discussion, right? And you want to start the discussion with, let's talk about how we're going to negotiate.
Mm-hmm.
How do you enter into that discussion?
Yeah, so you can do it. I like using humor sometimes in negotiations. So It could be, hey, what do you say we each lie to each other and do ultimatums and act like jerks? Maybe not. Yeah, I don't like that approach either. That's so I listened to this Decidedly podcast, and crazy, this wacko professor who's got this tea business and investing business and negotiation stuff. But it kind of that resonated with me. And can I share with you this idea about splitting the pie? And let me explain to you what it's about, and give them some examples. And and look, I want to do something that's fair. And what I'm going to propose about being fair isn't going to be based on my position or your position. It's going to be objectively fair.
Mm. How do you have the time to do all the things that you do? Because I would imagine running a company like Honest Tea was not a part-time job.
Well, the great news is that I had wonderful partners. Seth Goldman, who was my student and the CEO of Honest Tea, was the CEO. My job was being the chair of the board. And my job was to help him be successful, because if he succeeded, I'd succeed. And that oftentimes...
What's your role in the new company going to be?
I'm also on the board of the new company.
Yeah.
And I helped him in terms of coming up with a valuation when we raised money and how to justify that valuation. I spent a lot of time talking with investors to let him focus on running the business, because oftentimes CEOs get distracted from their operational job with the financing part. And I'm pretty good at the financing side. Worked on the graphic design. And so essentially, we each have different strengths. And my goal is to let him do the parts that he does brilliantly. And keep my day job as a professor.
Well, thanks so much for being here, Barry. I learned a lot. I think we failed your quiz.
Oh, yeah. I don't want any more questions from Barry. I feel so intimidated.
I'm like, oh, no, no, I thought that was it. I'm sorry. No, you made me question things, and you made me question the way that I think, and that's how I know I'm learning something. So thanks for being a part of this.
Thank you for inviting me. And I want to encourage you to offer your clients the opportunity to be a little bit more robotic and say, look, here are two sets of advice. And I'm prepared to tell you, this is what I think is really the right strategy. But I'm worried that you won't be able to execute it. And so this is the version that most people end up doing, but you may not be like most people, or here's the steps that you can take along those directions.
Yeah. No, I love that. And I will reference this conversation when I do. Where can people find your newest book?
They can go, of course, to Amazon, to splitthepiebook.com, where we give away the first chapter. There are lots of videos they can see. And then this is killing me, but there's a free online course that I created on Coursera that you can take, and you get my lectures, animations, students of mine recreating negotiations with debriefs afterwards, postmortems, if you like. So I hope people will find that a useful tool when they try and help explain to other folks why they should split the pie. People are just afraid of negotiation. They don't like it because they think the other side's acting like a jerk, and then they have to act like a jerk, and they don't like how they're acting themselves. They're not successful at it because they're not good at being a jerk. And so this shows actually a principled way to negotiate, how you can be successful without being a jerk.
Yeah, people are afraid of negotiations, and I think this is that'll help a lot. You gave me a lot of tools as we were talking. I'm like writing down or noting in my head, like, oh man, okay, I got to go back to this person. This deal I was working on.
Renegotiate a deal you made.
Hey man, remember when I offered you that terrible deal and you didn't take it? I
try this on for size.
Yeah, I think I have a better one now.
My takeaway from our discussion with Barry is that, number one, I'm glad I wasn't in his class at Yale, because every question he asked me, I felt like I was being set up, and I always had the wrong answer. But my takeaway from a decision-making standpoint is that in looking at negotiations, the first decision you have to make is determining how you're going to negotiate, or what points are going to be the negotiation discussion.
Yeah, determining the parameters of the negotiation before you start talking numbers. My biggest takeaway was his concept of splitting the pie, right? The pie is what is to be gained by the two of us doing a deal together. And by determining the pie, clearly articulating the pie, then we can split the pie. And it made me reflect on a lot of decisions I made where we never talked about the pie, and I probably didn't ever know what the pie was. You just made a great decision to listen to this episode of Decidedly. Make another great decision and leave us a 5-star review wherever you listen to podcasts. We appreciate your support. It helps others find our community and defeat bad decision-making in their own lives. For more daily decision-making insights, check us out at decidedlypodcast.com and on Facebook and Instagram at Decidedly Podcast. Thanks again for listening. I'm Sanger Smith, and this is Decidedly.
Insights, advice, and comments provided by Sean Smith, Sanger Smith, and speakers identified as part of the Decidedly podcast should not be considered recommendations. Speakers not identified as members of Decidedly are expressing their opinion, and their statements should not be construed as reflecting the views of the Decidedly team. This podcast is produced solely for informational purposes, not personalized advice.